loneliness epidemic. If you've got a functioning internet connection, this is something you've heard about.
People have been after me for a long time because I've been speaking to disaffected young men. You know, what a terrible thing to do that is. I thought the marginalized were supposed to have a voice.
It's making you emotional. Talk about it.
Well, God, you know. It's very difficult to understand how demoralized people are.
It's a heartbreaking reality, and if we don't change something quick, the consequences will be disastrous. I'm not just talking about a lot more podcasts featuring so-called 304s.
How are you crazy?
I'm dominant.
You're dominant?
Yes.
Like you want to what?
I'm daddy.
You're daddy.
Uh-huh.
Whoa, wait, show the tattoo to the camera right here.
It just says daddy.
I'm not talking about the price of Hustlers University going up and up and up.
All right, Hustlers University, listen to me. Broke people, and if you don't have a Bugatti, you're broke. So I would say 100% of the people watching this, I consider you all poor. Yeah. Broke people are one of three things. You're either arrogant, lazy, or stupid. You can decide which one you want to be. Maybe you're a mixture of all three, but you are. Because when I try and tell people how to make money, they usually come back with something like, yeah, but I think... Who cares what you think? You're poor. You're poor.
I'm talking about large-scale disruption, the fraying of the social fabric, the proliferation of violence and disorder, political corruption, nihilism, and very possibly the end of Western civilization. So it's kind of a big deal.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
I'm very happy for you.
I'm very important. I have many
Pokemon cards.
And my apartment smells of
dried bodily fluids.
What's causing it? I've heard a lot of thoughtful analysis, much of which points to social media as the culprit. Social media certainly amplifies the problem, but it's not the cause. I'm sure you've heard it. We're in the last stages of the American Empire, and a lot of men these days are thinking about ancient Rome.
In just 24 hours, that post with the hashtag Roman Empire has gotten like 6 million views, with women asking the men in their lives exactly how often they think about the Roman Empire.
How often do I think about it?
Yeah.
It's technically like every day.
Honestly, probably 2 to 3 times a day.
What?
That comparison is more fitting than you might imagine. In fact, the founders themselves based our government on a Roman model. They even went so far as to imitate its architecture. Caesar Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, encountered a similar problem.
Sophisticated young men about town, mostly made up of Rome's young nobility, prized culture, sophistication, and pleasure above all else. And this new culture of young party people overtook Rome during the latter years of the Republic, bringing with it a lifestyle of numerous divorces, adulteries, and an unwillingness to bear children. The Lex Julia Maritandis Ordinibus, the second of Augustus' laws, defined the societal norms governing who could marry and delineated the duties of marriage. This law encouraged marriage and procreation for men between the ages of 25 and 60, and for women between the ages of 20 and 50, with the expectation that these marriages would each produce 3 children among the nobility and 4 children among the masses. Additionally, harsh taxes were imposed on unmarried people, while those who did their duty to the state, producing the required number of children, were favored for political advancement in regards to magistracies, priesthoods, and provincial offices.
It's been said that all historical events repeat themselves. The first time, it's a tragedy. The second time, it's a farce. The decline in marriage rates is something that has to be addressed on a large scale. It's a real problem. Historian Peter Turchin, in his book Ages of Discord, provides some pretty chilling analysis about our current dilemma. In examining American history, Turchin discerned that our country goes through periods of prosperity, followed by times of social unrest, economic struggle, and war. When a prosperous age is coming to a close, several problems, according to Turchin, consistently arise. One of them is the age at which people first get married. When people get married now, they're older than they've ever been. And lots of folks aren't getting married at all. Instead, they're opting for the companionship of OF models, Twitch streamers, or AI chatbots. What a farce.
This will be her anniversary present for our 10-year I got these matching wedding bands. They say synthetic love lasts forever on them.
Obviously, these are the behaviors of lonely people, of folks who haven't been able to forge meaningful relationships with partners or with those around them. The psychological effects are crushing, but the physical effects might be even worse.
It's no secret that high blood pressure, heart disease, depression, and early death are all risks of smoking.
But surprisingly, loneliness can also have the same effects.
The effect of social isolation and loneliness on our health is as powerful as things like smoking, high blood pressure, obesity.
Being in a constant state of loneliness increases inflammation and in turn can raise the risk of several other diseases. A study from Florida State University found that loneliness can increase dementia risk by 40%.
People know about this problem and they know what's causing it. Remember what I said about Augustus. They've known about this for thousands of years. It seems as if someone is intentionally cultivating a generation of lonely, broken men.
Why is everybody saying Gen Z is going to get drafted? Like, no, the we're not. And you know why I know that? Because we're just going to say no. Like, how are they going to actually force us to get up and go to war? I understand it was like that in, like, the 1940s. What else is there to do in 1940 besides shoot people? We have things to do nowadays. We have twerk, be bisexual, eat hot chip, lie. And we're also, like, really mentally ill. I have like 6 of these.
These men aren't contributing to society, but can you blame them? Unmoored from any sense of community, they don't see much that's worth defending. And you could argue that it's the apps themselves. After all, these apps incentivize users to chase after materialism and greed and to manufacture a false image for likes and clicks. These apps have users staring at their phones instead of engaging with each other and with their communities. That's a nice idea, but we know it's not true. For proof, just look at TikTok in China and the values it encourages.
But apparently in China, the version of TikTok that Chinese citizens get, and particularly kids, is very different from what's served up everywhere else in the world. And apparently it has limits on how much time you can spend on it. It has history experiments and science experiments and things like that, as opposed to just a steady stream of people doing insane things. I'm sure you've heard about the TikTok challenges that have had parents all bent out of shape, and I think rightfully so. So, you know, it's very interesting that, again, you have a Chinese company behind this, and it seems like their behavior in almost any way you look at it is not very helpful to Americans, and particularly American parents and their kids.
So is it almost an idea that the Chinese government, in a sense, is trying to, I don't want to say train our kids, or maybe I do want to say train our kids. Is that part of the concern?
I think so. I mean, I know that sounds probably very conspiratorial, Bob.
When the Chinese Communist Party, one of the most despicable, repressive regimes on earth, has the moral high ground, it might be time to look in the mirror.
When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process.
If you were seeking to demoralize, destabilize, and undermine a society from within, you could hardly do better. But why? Dig into the more conspiratorial corners of the internet and you'll see a lot of stories about the World Economic Forum, an international body led by Klaus Schwab, a protege of Henry Kissinger. Here's Schwab bragging about the World Economic Forum planning leaders all around the world.
When I mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on, they all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm. But what we are very proud of now, the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.
Pretty creepy, right? Maybe there's a desire to undermine the West so that a new international order can be created, one where nobody is able to rise up, where, in the words of the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and be happy. It could well be true. There could be a secret global movement to usher in a one-world government. Say we expose it. Then we fire every one of them and throw most of them in jail. Then what? Still, we haven't fixed the problem. We haven't even identified it. We've just been talking about symptoms. So what's the disease? Let's define loneliness as a feeling of being unloved, especially in a romantic sense.
What do you think the chances are of a guy like you and a girl like me ending up together?
Not good.
You mean not good like 1 out of 100?
I'd say more like 1 out of 1,000,000.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
What's romantic love about? I mean, really about? A couple of millennia ago, the Greek philosopher Socrates was at a party with many of the prominent thinkers of his day, and they all got to talking about love, what love is, and what it meant. One after another, they all shared stories and ideas about the ultimate goal of love. When it was Socrates' turn, he spoke about his friend, a woman named Diotima, who completely altered his opinion on what love is and what its true purpose was. According to Diotima, love is closely tied to mortality. Our desire for another person comes because we know deep down that we're going to be gone one day. We're drawn to the beauty of another because we can produce offspring. But that's not the only kind of love. That's a very limited kind of immortality. If someone truly seeks to understand love after they've fallen for a beautiful body, they'll start to discern what makes all bodies beautiful. Then they'll start to see what's beautiful in ideas, in laws, in art. A love of ideas produces a different kind of offspring, great works of literature, contributions to society, and so forth. And they have a lot longer shelf life than physical children. But that's not the end of the road. Because if we start to see what makes these things beautiful and how the beautiful can be possessed by bodies or works of art or laws or ideas, then we begin to race toward the source of beauty, from which all beautiful things partake. This beauty is itself immortal and beyond any particular. Diotima describes it as beauty absolute, separate, simple, and everlasting, which without diminution and without increase or any change is imparted to the ever-growing and perishing beauties of all other things. In the philosophy of Plato, there's an unbridgeable gap between the formal world, the world in which things like pure beauty reside, and the material world. The material is only an imperfect, decaying copy of its formal counterpart. But for Christians, Jesus changed all that. In the book of Colossians, we find a remarkable passage about the nature of Christ. It says, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers, all things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together." That means both the formal and the material world were created in Christ, through him and for him. Sure, all the stars and the planets and so forth, but also the very laws that hold the universe together. God, who is invisible, took on tangible flesh and blood and walked among us. The Word, the Bible says, became flesh. That's the same word that God spoke when he said, "Let there be light." The very word, invisible, omnipotent, by which the universe was called into being, was born to a virgin in Bethlehem. Through Christ's resurrection, he conquered death for all the material world. When the priest consecrates the host, and when we receive it, Christ's perfect body, his deathless body, is united with ours, with our broken bodies, with our bodies filled with illusions, disorder, and desires for earthly, destructive things. That's true immortality. It's the ultimate gesture of love, and no person, no possession, no achievement can replace it.